Yay. All right, we are live. We are live once again, Friday afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. It's my pleasure always to invite and to introduce to you people who are doing an enormous amount of work in the community and influence our work, our environment, our style of life. So I have one of those people with me today, which very excited to have a conversation. We had a conversation yesterday. I was like, so many questions. Cesar Zepeda, he is with the Sierra Club. He is the chair of the West Contra Costa group. And also, I am not going to be able to memorize all his other positions. We were just joking that I was like, how do you do all of this? So I'm just going to read a little bit of where he's volunteering. Volunteer positions. He does have a full-time job, which he might if he wants to, but he is Lambda Democratic of Contra Costa County board member, and founding member of Richmond Rainbow Pride. He is also formerly a board member at Lavender, right? That's the easiest one, Lavender Youth Recreation and Information Center, and former executive board member at California Democratic Party, which is a huge position also. So, and I met Cesar the first time when he actually ran for office, and I think that everybody was extremely excited when you were running for the city council. Cesar, thank you so much for joining. And we are live. We have wonderful Julia helping us around, and she's going to chat us up if something goes a little bit wrong. So forgive us. We were just joking that a lot of people probably watching Netflix, so there might be a little bit interruption here and there. So the technology. All right, Cesar, thank you so much for joining. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me, Olga. I'm doing great. It's a great day out there, or inside, out inside.
I know we were talking yesterday that you were following the COVID quarantine pretty strictly. So do you want to share how are you weathering this whole storm, I would say? Long storm, right?
So for the first few months, I did not leave my house. I stayed indoors. I didn't go out the front door at all. I didn't go get my mail. I didn't go put out the trash. I luckily don't put out a lot of trash. I try to recycle as much and compost as much. So I had very little trash to be put out anyways. And then I was looking for projects to do inside, whether it was painting. I like painting. So I had the opportunity to do a lot of painting, organizing. I have 2 dogs, so I've been playing with them, giving them a lot more attention. Now I don't know what's going to happen when I have to go back out. They're going to freak out. But just trying to find something to do within my space. Reading books that I've been postponing, saying I don't have time to read it right now. So I start a book and I haven't finished it. I actually ordered a bunch of books from Amazon, trying to just have a stack of books that I can have ready to go as I'm reading through them. And trying to learn something new, something about myself, something that, again, I haven't had the opportunity to do while I've been running around doing other stuff. Now I'm here and I have nowhere else to go. And then thinking about how we're going to move forward once everything opens back up, right? Because we definitely don't want to go back to the way things were. We want to go forward to a new way of being. So thinking about
more of that about that. I mean, because I'm actually also thinking that, you know, what from the sort of past lifestyle we want to keep and what do we want to reinvent. So obviously you've been contemplating about that. So do you want to share a little bit what are your visions and what do you want to leave in the back behind and, you know, sort of have in moving forward?
We have to be very careful with our air, right? Now we see this is a once in a lifetime, our lifetime, luckily, opportunity, luckily in a way that we have to where we can see what happens to the world when humans stop polluting.
Yeah.
Right? We have seen more animals come out. You've been able to see things people have not seen in a long time because the air is cleaner, and it's, you can see the blue skies as opposed to a tone of gray, blue gray. So realizing that, taking that as an opportunity, right? Figuring out the silver lining around this issue. And then how we move forward is looking at all the stuff that we do and did that were contributing to it. When we drive, figuring out how can we drive less. Now we know we do not need to drive to every meeting. We can do it over Zoom, right? So that's something that we might be able to cut off. I'm also board director of the West County Wastewater District. And there we just adopted policies to move the board. And we're starting with the board because to me it was important that the board first took on all these issues, and then we're doing it with the staff to where we're installing electric vehicle charging stations, because we do need vehicles to move around the equipment and to service the pipes, right? So that is a given, we need them. But do we need vehicles that are gas guzzlers? Can we move them over to being electric vehicles? And the answer is yes, right? The technology is getting better every day. So now we are installing electric vehicle charging stations. When we go back to the boardroom is going to be looking a little different. We're working on the lights. We're looking at the AC. We're looking at every single thing that can potentially pollute or create more carbon. We want to be carbon neutral. So we're starting now that we have this opportunity. Before, some of the board members would print their agendas. Now they're realizing they don't need to print it. It's online. It's always been online, right? But we have the habit of just control and print. And then you end up getting this packet of information that you may or may not read. And it was just a waste. So people are starting to realize that now, that you can make small changes. They weren't that painful, right? With COVID, there was no maybe, maybe not. If you like it, do it. If you don't like it, don't do it. It's, you can't go out and you are not going to be able to print all this. You're going to not drive. Like it or not, it's going to be what it is. So it allowed people to do the hard things they didn't want to do, they didn't want to try, and realizing that it's a lot better.
I agree, obviously, from the environmental perspective. What I'm always sort of concerned about and wondering how, because there's the real digital divide that we cannot, ignore. And I agree that there's actually a lot of people commenting that they had a huge increase in meeting participation because it's so much easier for people to tune in. At least to tune online. So I'm always thinking, how can we, bridge that digital divide and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to participate. So any thoughts on that, on that issue or solution, perhaps?
So expanding all of those. So I also sit one of the other, and it's not on, I think you got some of those titles from my Facebook page. Some of the ones that are not on there, I also sit on the Contra College Foundation Board. Right, so from there, I have the opportunity to be able to help the college and the students. So we were talking about how can we help them be able to continue their education through COVID. So we put some funding out there to get some laptops for students.
Oh, wow.
And then some funding out there to be able to give them internet access. In low-income communities, you don't have the luxury of internet sometimes, right? It's either going to be, do you pay your rent, do you buy food, or do you watch Netflix, right? So internet access is a luxury that not everybody's able to have. So we need to be able to change that, figuring out ways. I know Comcast and a few other internet providers ended up giving out free internet in certain places for people to be able to access them because they knew it was a service people would need now because they couldn't drive to school or be present somewhere. So they were able to gap that. Now we just have to figure out how to do it going forward. right? Do we give laptops to all the students? How do we give them that access? How do we give them, again, internet? Do we privatize it? Or if not, do we work with these companies to say, look, you got to be able to have different tiers for income so that everybody is able to access it? Different cities like the city of Richmond, and I believe the city of San Pablo, also provide free internet in certain places. So as long as you're close enough to one of the big routers, you're able to connect all around the city of Richmond. So there's ways, we just have to continue that after we come out of COVID.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, some of us, or I certainly, you know, it takes me deliberate effort to think about those things, because we do take them for granted sometimes, because it's just, oh, every place I ever lived, we had Wi-Fi. Sort of so for me, it definitely, and I think for a lot of probably elected officials also, unless they come from the communities that have fight for their rights, they have, you know, services. So I think that it's up to us, to people who are aware of that, to sort of, that a lot of people are aware, especially who represent our community, to make sure that we have access for everybody. Can you hear and see me well? I'm having.
Yeah, I can see you. You froze there for a minute, but I can see you okay.
Okay, forgive us. I hope you bear with us during the Wi-Fi connection.
Speaking of,
to go down that route conversation that can take us on the rabbit hole. But you know, several things that I'm so you've been quite a bit, and right before the live stream, you were telling me that you cannot imagine your life without volunteering, and clearly making yourself seem okay. Julie is telling us that everything is okay so far. Yourself busy. So where does it come from? Did you grow up in a family that celebrated volunteerism, or how did you come to do such for?
So a little bit of both, and part of it I didn't find out until later. But I think my volunteerism comes from some of the obstacles that have been in my life, and some of the challenges, and also opportunities. When I was younger, I came out as gay, and I got kicked out. And through that, I had to see the world a little bit differently. And
you're talking about?
I'm sorry?
Kicked out of the family, or?
Yeah, kicked out of the house and kicked out of the family.
I'm so sorry.
So being able to see what the world around me did, and through that, being able to give that back. Right, I had friends who helped me out. I realized that there was organizations out there like Lyric, the Lavender Youth Recreation and Information Center, where I was a board member, a former board member, realizing what they were doing, and then being the one at the other end receiving those services. It makes you think differently. It makes you realize that you got to be able to give back, because you're not always going to be in the giving end. You might be in the receiving end. And it's important to give back to these organizations. It also helps me sort of mentally feel like I belong somewhere, right? I am part of the community. I can go into various shelters. I remember many years ago in San Francisco, I was helping out at a food bank, and this person comes up to me, and she was one of the individuals that was living on the streets. And she sees me and she says, "You're Cesar, right?" I wasn't wearing a badge or anything. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I am." She's like, "Yeah, thanks for helping out." And she remembered me from other events.
Wow. Right?
So you touch people in certain ways that you are not always aware. You might be giving somebody a meal, but to you it's just a meal. You're lucky enough to be able to have 3. To them, that might be their only meal. So to them, it's more than a meal. And especially because another person's given it to them. I remember also giving, being on another board, and every Thanksgiving we would give meals throughout San Francisco to different homeless and people on the streets. Mm-hmm. And I remember walking up to one individual, and I gave him, it was a little box, and inside of the box was a sandwich with a cookie and then a little care kit. The care kit had a bottle of water, a pair of socks, and a little card from a local elementary school. And the kids would draw something and like Happy Thanksgiving, or each card was different, right? So I remember giving him the box. And then as we walked away, the friend that was with me, she said, Cesar, look back. And I looked back, and this gentleman on top of the garbage can, he took out his meal, he put his sandwich, his water, he had his pair of socks, and he was reading the little card, and he was crying. And when he was crying, I realized, right, it's more than a meal, it's more than a pair of socks, it's more than a card, it's the human interaction, right? You have touched someone the way that they haven't been touched maybe in a long time, not necessarily physically, but mentally. Yeah. Right? Who knows if this person had a child before that they remember from that card. You know, the stories, I mean, I have so many stories about the individuals that I've met that have been out on the streets for different reasons. Yeah. And all that just and gives me the energy to volunteer more, which is why, you know, I volunteer all over the place. I have a really hard time saying no. And I'm learning, but I still haven't yet. When people say, do you want to volunteer? I have a really hard time saying no, because I know that it's going to help somebody out. And because I was there once. That's sort of where I got it from.
Yeah, and I really think that, you know, I just always in awe. You know, we have so many people around us. I think that and I'm constantly in awe how you able to handle so many things and handle them well. I mean, I know that you have very good reputation, so with you, so I'm you know, very grateful, and it's a constant learning opportunity for me, and I hope for everybody who is listening. And you know what, for me, again, something that you know, I worked in government, and I still do actually. The huge eye-opening experience for me was when we were in Count in Time, homeless, our homeless neighbors, and there's so many misperceptions. There's so many, you know, assumptions about why people on the street are on the streets. And it's like, people really need to research that and take time to learn about that, because a lot of people, especially now, are former residents, people who were displaced because, you know, they cannot afford to live in their own neighborhoods where they grew up. And people a lot of times feel, oh, somebody came here. Well, even if somebody came here, you know, they didn't come here to live on the street out of good life, you know, where they came from. So I think that there are a lot of sort of awareness and learning and compassion that we can exercise. And I appreciate you bringing that awareness and human touch. I need to sort of probably, because I get very emotional about that, because yeah, it's clearly human issues, and we all experience them in need. You know, you also touched something that is, I think, very important, that we don't talk, especially in the political and sort of environmental community, about personal care and personal growth. And you mentioned that you have, you know, books that you're reading, and you clearly very functional and very effective person. So I'm wondering what keeps you at that level. What books are you reading? So to pile too many questions, but what keeps you that high operational, I think?
So I've been learning, right? It's a learning process. And, you know, also just going back really quickly, one of the reasons that I can do a lot of boards and a lot of groups is because of the individuals that are with me, right? Either in the board, right? Whether I'm leading the board or whether I'm one of the board members as well, it's the group, as a collaboration of all that makes the organization run smooth. So I thank all of them for making me look good, because it's a group effort to make all these organizations run successfully. But in terms of the books, or just what I've learned from the books that I have read, is give yourself about an hour each day, whether at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, and just read everything. One of the latest books that I am reading, and it's called Becoming the Boss, I believe. And it's from this woman, and I have to look for the book. Actually, it's not right here. Becoming the Boss.
Oh, wow.
Right? And it's more than just wanting to be a boss. It's more than wanting to become.
It's what?
It's more than trying to become a CEO or a boss, right? It's not about you being a manager or actually being a boss, but it's more about a boss of you, right? How do you grow, and how do you become a leader, right? Because a boss is just somebody, the boss is somebody around. But what I've been getting from this book is how to be more of a leader and how to think outside the box, how to communicate with individuals. And this book was telling me, and I've read other books as well, give yourself about an hour each day to read things that you wouldn't always read. So you can see other perspectives, right? And the author shared that she went to a conference once, and she went in to the wrong room by mistake. And once she was there, she realized, oh, this is not the topic I signed up for. But she didn't walk out because there wasn't that many people there. So she didn't want to make it awkward, where she, I think there was only a handful of people, and by her leaving is going to make the person feel bad. So she decided to stay. Later, a few years later, she's asked about something that she learned from there. Right? So it's like reading things that are not always in your agenda. If you're a environmentalist, learn about photography. If you're a photographer, learn about cars. Learn about, something different. In the news, I mean, I wake up every morning and I read just all kinds of different news, from the New York Times, Bloomberg, USA Today, NBC News, even Fox News. I don't read them that often, but I glance through so I can see perspectives and I can see what's going on, learning something that is not always part of my day-to-day, because ultimately everything gets connected.
Yeah.
And, just trying to stay up there so I can have something smart to think about or learn about or say something to someone.
That's I think it's a great advice. I mean, I'm sort of, gravitating to certain type of information, but I also like sometimes to go like news, because I think it's actually tremendously useful. And news, maybe for me, it's more of a sort of, voices. But I've been thinking is I want to almost like deliberately people who don't consider themselves environmentalist or progressives, and really have a conversation where their perspectives are coming from. Because ultimately I feel like unless we bring at least 80% most of the people to sort of certain behaviors, certain views, or certain learning experiences, I think we're not going to win some of the, I don't want to use battle language, but some of the things that we want to transform. We're not going to be able to transform that because there's so much resistance. And I think resistance is not coming necessarily from they don't want the same thing. I think there's a lot of research when we talk to people in a lay language, everybody wants clean air, clean water, clean, not beautiful nature, good food, where they don't have to worry about what are they buying at the store, is it going to harm their children, their pets, themselves, etc. But in a certain language that just doesn't penetrate the other side, and vice versa. So I think that there's a huge benefit from us learning different perspectives. So, and I definitely should be better at that, but yeah, good, great. Do you meditate, or do you do any practices that sort of help you center also, or sort of contemplate, be aware, or?
No, what I do is painting, and I try to do arts and crafts. I clean a lot. That helps me declutter my mind. I clean, my garage or a house, whatever. I'm always organizing something that helps me just have a. I read that once in a book a long time ago, that if your space around you is organized and clean, your mind has more space to be more creative and more space to be able to think more and act more. And when it's crowded around you, your mind also feels the same. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been working on that, and I realized that when I do that, I become more productive, because otherwise you just see papers everywhere and it's like but I don't necessarily meditate yet. What's up?
Feng Shui.
A little bit. I'm working on that now with COVID. I have some friends that we do a little bit of yoga every once in a while. So I've been learning that. I've never done that before, and they're teaching me a few little moves here and there, and we do a few minutes a day. So that's
Wow.
something new that I've taken up now. I've always wanted to do yoga. It's like, I'm not going anywhere. Might as well do it now.
I think it's great. Congratulations, especially if you're sticking with it regularly. I think it's great. I'm also, very proud of myself that I'm now sticking with a practice, daily practice, which is basically yoga, and it's combination of exercises, yoga, breathing, and meditation. And I really, the difference I feel when I don't do that, and it's so stark to me. It just, you take for granted it sometimes. So it's like, that you do, and then when you don't do that, it's like, oh my God, I haven't done it today. I'm not feeling as grounded. So it's been very interesting. So you know what, I want to touch, and I, if you don't want to continue that subject, let me know, obviously, but there, it's a big deal, coming out and being a resource for your community. How's it shaping you? Did you heal your relationship with your family, sort of, and you clearly giving up to the community and supporting other people? So if you want to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. I like sharing. Yesterday, actually, at work, we are doing presentations about each other, and I presented, and I started my presentation with talking about stories. Right, it's important that we all share our stories. Each one of us has a story, and each one of us can learn from each other's stories.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you struggled with something, then if you share it with me, I might be able to learn, because I can now either learn from you or about you or something about myself. Yeah, and so I think it's important to share stories. So thank you for asking me that. So through my coming out, right, it was very difficult. I went through a very, very dark time.
How old were you?
I was 19, 20.
Okay. Where did you grow up, Cesar? I'm so sorry, I didn't ask.
I grew up here in the East Bay, in Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
My parents are very they're Catholic, more conservative,
Mm-hmm.
but they're Latino, they're Mexican, so they grew up with straight, and there's no gay, and gay is bad, and they didn't really know anything else. So when I came out a few days after September 11th, which was all kinds of bad timing.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad finally asked me, and I told him, and he said I had to leave, so I left. I had 2 hours to leave, and that was that.
Wow. Sorry.
So I went from even considering suicide, right? So I went from a dark place there. I had a really hard time because my whole family pretty much disowned me. So I went from that.
Oh.
And then you flash forward, producing the very first Pride event in Richmond 6 years ago. One of my brothers, right? We mended everything, and it took about 4 years, but everything is mended. I visited my parents the other day for Mother's Day. My siblings come over all the time. All my family has keys to my house, and we're back to being close again. We were always close, and we're back to being close again. So it takes time for anyone out there that's struggling, you might have a hard time coming out, but there's always going to be a better time. You have to just stick with it for a little bit and try to work on changing people's minds and perspectives, and not just forcing them to see your side, but forcing them to see themselves with you around them. And I have a few stories. One of them, one of my brothers who was very close, who I was very close with, he was the first one to find out before my dad. And he pushed me away and said, don't want anything to do with you. So we went from being very close to nothing at all. And then we came back around. While we were building Pride, literally building the Pride event in the park, he was the first one there to help us put it together, right? And I've shared this story with other people, and one of my board members comes up and says, "That's Oscar?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's my brother who pushed me away. He was the first one to push me away." And they just couldn't believe it. They're like, that's not him. He's out there like without. Now my board has told me many times, without him, they're like, "Cesar, you can stay home. We don't care about you. Your brother needs to come out and help us put this together, because he's there building the stage. He's there putting things up. He's, helping us break things down. He's always there." So we have that closeness again, but it took time, right? And then talking about sort of sharing perspectives, and the way that I work to try to have people see my side is not pushing it down people's throat, but it's allowing them to see what they have failed to see themselves. So my mom, I got kicked out. Years later, we're all back together, and my mom had cancer. So the hospital is closer to my house, so they ended up living with me.
Oh, wow.
Right? How tables turned. So my mom lived with me, my parents lived with me. So my mom would be upstairs because with chemo, she would get very weak, so she couldn't walk, and she just wanted to be in a dark room sleeping. And this gave me the opportunity to have dinner with my dad. Right? So we had dinner almost every night, things that we haven't done before, ever. I don't think he's done that with any of my siblings. So I got a lot closer to my dad. We shared stories, talked about different things. I also asked him why he kicked me out. Right? And that was a hard conversation, but I needed to know. And he said that he overreacted. And I said, if you regretted it? He said, yes. And I said, when? He said, the second I said it. But it was too macho to take it back. Right? So it took 4 years for him to not take it back for him, but for us to move forward. Because these are all growing opportunities. And while my parents were here, I don't cook. Now with COVID, I'm learning to cook. But prior to this, I didn't really cook other than cereal, which is not cooking, people tell me.
It's not.
My mom would cook. So I remember coming into the kitchen and saying, "Oh, Mom, Dad, I gained some weight." And my dad looks at me and he says, "Oh yeah, because your mom is cooking. That's why you need to marry a woman."
Oh God.
So I didn't argue.
Yeah.
I needed to prove him different. So the next day I printed a list of the top 10 chefs in the world. And the majority of them were men. So I come into the house and I just put it down on the kitchen table. He looked at it, he's like, "What is this?" I'm like, "Oh, top 10 chefs of the world." And he looks at my mom and says, "Oh, look, men could cook much better, blah, 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 men. I look at him and I say, yes, that's why I'm going to marry one of them.
Wow, that's great. I come with creative ways to demonstrate it. I'm sure it probably didn't sit very well with your mom.
Well, they had nothing else to say. What can they say, right? If his logic was a woman could cook for you so you won't be skinny, and then I changed it around to men cook better, and you agreed with me.
Yeah.
So why would I marry a woman if you're saying the men cook better?
Yeah, no.
Don't you want the best for me?
I think it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
And
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, and then from there on, right? So they walked with me door to door when I was running for city council, right? So they were there for me. They've been there with me. So everything has mended. They know they're proud of me now. They were at my inauguration when I got seated as director for the West County Wastewater District. So things have changed. So just for people out there, right, you may be going through a hard time, but stick with it. Things will change and things will get better.
I think you're right. Being true to who you are, I think that's the most important part. And I'm not just saying it as it's true. I mean, because if you don't, constant battle within you, and I think that's the most disruptive and the most sort of agonizing thing when you torn within yourself. You said something interesting that I actually wanted to sort of, and you had some stories, but you said that you didn't shove it down their throats, but you also showed them how sorry, I'm paraphrasing, be with you in them. Sort of, can you say more, because that's an interesting concept. How do you, how can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so just figuring out what their fears were, right? Homophobia is a fear of gays, right? It's a fear of the unknown. A phobia is a fear of the unknown. So figuring out what their fears were and then putting them at ease, helping them see again, because they've never walked in my shoes. They've never walked in any gay man's shoes. My dad, the only thing my dad would see on TV, in Latin TV, is gays made fun of, right? The gays were always the pun of the joke. The gays were, always wearing a dress and being flamboyant and sissies, and people will make fun of them, which a lot of us are, right? A lot of us are very queer, very gay, very sissy. We wear dresses, we wear pants, we wear everything, right? We're free. But he had a fear. And I think through the time, he was able to see that don't fear, respect. It's difficult to show it or to say it, but the transformation that I saw from him, being able to see him seeing me run for office, and then everywhere they would go, people would want to meet them and say, "Wow, you did a great job raising your son." And he's looking at me like, "What did I do?" But the hard parts and the good times and the bad times all made me who I am, right? I would never, if I had the opportunity to do it over again, I would do it just the same way. And it's just getting to know somebody and understanding their fears, and then how to get to them. Everybody learns differently. And that's the other thing, is we all learn differently. So you don't shove something down their throat when they're not getting it in one way. I have to, unfortunately, right, because I'm the one that's being persecuted, I have to have a little bit more patience to allow others to learn, right? And if people might disagree and say, "No, we're going to go and knock down the doors," I'm all there too, right? If I would go and protest as well. But just figuring out, how do you get through to different people? Yeah.
No, that's a very good point. And I have to say, I give you a huge credit, and your parents also, your family, huge credit for being willing to walk and to learn and to understand, because not too many people, or not all people, are willing to that, and people, unfortunately, it takes that for them much longer to remedy the relationships or never heal those relationships. So I think that's a huge compliment to you and to your family, for sure. And are your parents, you said they from here or from Mexico? They're immigrants, or?
Yeah, we're all immigrants from Mexico. I was born in Mexico. I was brought to the U.S. when I was 8.
Oh, wow. So, okay. You have memories. I'm actually curious, because I grew up in Russia. I came here as an adult, basically, in my early 20s. So I'm always fascinated with different stories. I think there's a we carry those memories, and they influence us. So anything, and always, here both in the environmental sphere. So I'm curious, how did you what to do to environmental protection. Maybe you have some stories from the childhood. I'm curious if you have memories. And
I do. One of my earliest, I used to be part of Creek Keepers, was our name. The Creek.
Creek.
Yeah,
okay.
Creek Keepers.
Creek. I have to work on my pronunciation. Creek.
So when I was in high school, I don't remember how I got involved with them, but it was one of my classes that said, oh, there's this person that's coming in. He has a grant from the EPA, and we're going to go out and do water quality monitoring around Wildcat Creek and Wildcat Canyon. So that's where I started learning more about the environment and what it all meant. Because before that, I was a kid. I didn't know anything. I didn't really know I needed to know anything or be aware of our environment and how to take care of it. From there, I've learned about the fishes, the habitat. I walked Wildcat Creek Canyon from top to the bottom, literally from the top of the Berkeley Hills all the way to the shoreline.
Wow.
Doing creek cleanups, vegetation cleanups. And that's where I started getting more into it.
How old were you? Was it in?
I was in high school.
In high school. Oh.
Yeah, I think I was in maybe 9th, 10th, 11th grade or something. I don't remember anymore.
Okay.
And then,
did you do any hiking or camping or anything?
Yep, all of the above. We used to go hiking. Again, we hiked the trails all the time, every weekend, to do the water quality monitoring. We did newt count.
Count, yes.
So we would go in there. I remember that. That was fun, picking up the newts, figuring out if it was, a male or a female, and then which direction it was going. So we can count them, measure them.
I'm a veterinarian. I'm like, how do you determine a sex on the newt?
So it's on the newt. If I remember, it's been a long time, but
I'm sure a lot of people will not need to know that, But I'm so curious.
Well, you asked, but if you wanted to know, you can Google it. If it's a family show, you can Google it.
No. I think it's fine. Yeah, I want to know.
I think it was on the bottom. If I remember correctly, either on the bottom, it had like a little triangle or a little circle. And if it was a triangle, it was a girl. And if it was a circle, or it was a female, and if it was a circle, it was a male. One of those like that.
Wow.
So we tried to figure out. Yeah. So, we try to figure out to see how they were doing, if they were migrating correctly, if they've already laid their eggs or not, if they were going from or to the creek. We kind of knew if they were going to go mate or if they already finished, right? And making sure that the population was healthy.
Wow. That's pretty fascinating, I have to say. I mean, my introduction to nature was actually, I was considered lucky because it was such an amazing childhood. I grew up in Russia, in St. Petersburg, but we spend a lot of summers in the country, and going berry picking from pages, like it's like, oh, there's a hedgehog with babies, a squirrel carrying a belly. So it was, or hey, there's a moose standing right there. So it was that introduction to the yes. We had a couple of times actually driving from country house, and moose ran across the street. That's a scary experience because moose, it's about size, so it's a huge animal. So it's not a pleasant. No, yeah, they're very cute, but yeah, not when you see them in the wilderness.
I've seen pictures. I love animals. You asked me if I camp as well. So one of the times that I was camping at Tilden Park, right? So there's campgrounds there, and there's also a small children's farm. So many years ago, it's by the carousel.
I see.
Many years ago, as a kid, we were camping, and in the morning I can hear the animals in the farm. So I went down to the farm, and I asked the farmer, if I can have some of the goose eggs. And he gave me 3 goose eggs.
Wow.
And I brought them back home, and they're huge, right? I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they're huge eggs.
Mm-hmm.
So I had chickens at home. So I had lots of animals at my house. I had peacocks, chickens, fish, turtles, dogs. I love animals.
You mean at your house right now?
No, not now. No, when I was a kid.
Oh, I see.
Now, when I was a kid, I had all kinds of animals. And I put one of the goose eggs under the chicken.
Wow. I thought that's where you were going. I'm like.
So the chicken ended up hatching a goose, a peacock, and a few chickens.
Oh my God. Wow.
So yeah, that was an experiment that I don't know if it was going to work, and it worked.
So that's pretty, I was like, poor chicken, because the eggs are really big, you know.
They are big, yeah. But she was able to cover she was a big chicken.
Wow. Did she care for the peacock?
It was very odd and cool, right? This modern family of chickens. It was the chicken at the beginning, right? The chicks are small, and the geese are small, the goose is small, and so is the peacock. But all of a sudden, the goose was bigger than the chicken, and the peacock, they're really hard to keep. So I ended up dying after a few months. Even though I had bigger peacocks, they're really hard. But just seeing them, the different sizes of the birds, it was just something interesting that I did as a kid.
Kind of metaphor, for life, how it should be. It's like, well, but it could be, accepting. So what are you excited about now? Well, you actually have 2 dogs, and I think you have 2 big dogs, right?
I have a big one and a little one. I have a German Shepherd. So that's the big one. And then I have a miniature pincher, which is a little one.
Yes. You were saying that you're not, you just started walking with dogs. Now, like, oh my God, how are you? It's like, and I saw in pictures German Shepherd, and I was like, that's a big dog to inside. I was like, yeah. So what excites you now? What do you sort of, we talked a little bit in the beginning that it is an opportunity right now to sort of rethink a lot of things. And, something that I wanted to say, it's, now some people trying to use the sort of COVID as, we need to reverse some of the things and help businesses, which true, we do need to help business, the small and medium-sized businesses, I feel like. But, air pollution especially is linked to so many diseases, not just lung diseases, but, cancers and heart and circulation. I mean, it's all kinds, because with air pollution, we don't just breathe in things and breathe them out. They actually are collected in our bodies. So I'm curious how we can collectively sort of educate people and really pivot to, now we need to really create a new world. I don't want to say economy, but new world where people understand the connection between human health and environmental health. So that's, I'm sort of, sorry, I'm asking the question, I'm responding it for myself. That's what excites me. I was like, how can we bridge that sort of knowledge gap and let people know that, hey, your body is nature, basically. If you really think about it, you are what you eat, breathe, drink, etc. So I'm saying what excites me. So what excites you going forward?
Same thing. We're in the same page there. I think that trying to get more people. So my prior role in the Sierra Club was chair of the Environmental Justice Committee. And one of our tasks was to do more electric vehicle charging stations and getting more cities to adopt policies for electric vehicle charging stations. So we were successful in some cities. But I think as we open up the country and the state more particularly, because the country, it's much more complicated. Excuse me, but as we open up the country or the state, trying to get more people to do electric vehicles. And then ultimately getting better transportation system.
You froze a little, Cesar, for me. I'm so sorry. You said electric vehicle and?
So more electric vehicles, and then better transportation system, right? And with the electric vehicles, people need cars because we don't all live near our jobs and we don't have the best transportation system. So if you need to get to somewhere, better if you do it in an electric vehicle than a gas guzzler. And then ultimately, if we have better transportation, that's what we really need. Like I would love to be able to go from here to San Francisco in a different option than my car, which I don't always go on car, but like sometimes I take the ferry, right? But not everybody's able to have that luxury. I consider that a luxury because people sometimes need to bring their equipment. They can't get on park. They need to drive a car. So we need better vehicles to get us across. And getting, I know that right now everybody's going through economic hardship, all the states, all the cities. But if there's some money left in there that we can put towards getting more people to get onto electric vehicles, I think that will be getting us partly way there to somewhere that we need to be. We're more carbon neutral. And then businesses and employers should be looking at ways to reduce waste, because now, again, we've been able to figure that out. Right? I haven't used my car pretty much. So there's ways to be able to work from home. Maybe more people should do it because that's less vehicles on the road, period, whether it's electric or not. We are able to have more meetings online, right? So just figuring things out. So what excites me overall is just talking to people like yourself and brainstorming about what can be and how we will work towards it. But also very important is making sure that we have enough people in government that will make these policies stick. Right? So with the West County Wastewater District, we have a really good board and we're working on some green policies. And again, we just adopted one of them. So making sure that we have those policies set up so that when we do open that up for the employees and for customers, we're having a much better footprint out there in the world. We're going to be adopting that whenever we want to fly, once everything opens up, because we have to fly to places. But if we fly somewhere, calculating how many trees we have to plant. And then as a board member, you're going to be responsible for that. Or as an agency, getting the agency to be responsible for, if one board member needs to fly to LA for a convention, it might be, and I don't know this yet, I haven't calculated it, but maybe it's 5 trees. So making sure that we plant 5 trees somewhere in our community for every trip we take. And so just figuring out ways to reduce our carbon footprint, thinking outside the box, because we no longer have people that can say, that won't work, because we're trying a lot of new stuff that people were opposed to before. Again, like not printing. Or people would say, I can't do Zoom. It's got to be in person. It's so impersonal doing this, but this is great. Right? And I think people are realizing it works.
A lot of people, I think, realizing, actually, I don't know about you, but I think that they're also, I'm generalizing and I'm going to stick with example. We both volunteer and we volunteer a lot. So I think that this just be said that if you are at home and you feeling, sad, bored, whatever that, sort of feelings that we consider usually not very desirable, look at the list of organizations that you can volunteer, especially in the Bay Area. We have a wealth of organizations and they always eager people who can actually do the work, get involved, learn, participate. So this is something that I would definitely recommend anybody who is tuning in. And I know that probably a lot who are listening to us already, volunteers. So we need to get this message out there.
In the West County, so I'm going to put my own little pitch there, right? The West County group is looking for volunteers all the time. We have a good board. We have a full board, right? We haven't had a full board in a while, but now we have a full board. They're active. They're new, some new board members, some former board members, but everybody's really active and excited. And we want some volunteers, not for the board, but to sit on committees and to be able to help us out, achieve different things that we're doing in West County, getting the word out, there's different things that are going on around our community that we need help with. So if you're out there looking for something to do, get involved in one of the Sierra Club groups, one of the committees so that we can get more things done.
Yeah, we definitely don't shortage of things to do. We always have a shortage of time and shortage of people. So and there's always room for, if you're really passionate about an issue and you want to sort of help with moving that issue forward. I think organizations like Sierra Club is definitely a good way. I mean, there sometimes takes time. I mean, we a democratic organization for a reason, because we are involved in endorsements. We're also involved in lawsuits. So there's a reason why we have sort of structures in place that are there. Some of them could be, anyway, that's a separate conversation. Yes, there are so many ways to get involved, and I agree. And I think that what I'm so happy, Cesar, with you being on the board, because you clearly have this mindset and of mentoring people, of being friendly, being understanding that people join clubs like this to be educated and to learn about issues and to offer their passion to move something forward. So I really appreciate your work for sure in that. And we are coming to a closing. I have so many other issues, other questions that I would love to ask you, but anything that you want to share and ask you that, you really feel, compelled and passionate about sharing with people.
Yeah, so a few things. Thank you for asking me that. So a few things. One of them is the census, making sure everybody has gotten counted.
I love it.
Yes. Because I heard that for every person that doesn't get counted, we lose $2,000 a month for our community.
Wow.
So
you know that.
Mm-hmm. So it's super, super important. The census doesn't just make you visible, right? So you're getting counted, but it makes the community stronger. Mm-hmm. We are at risk in the state of California losing 1 congressional seat. That's huge.
How many? Sorry, you broke up a little bit. I mean, 2, right?
Sorry, one congressional seat. We will probably be losing 1 congressional seat at the census, but also, so a couple of things happen with the census, right? They redraw the districts, mm-hmm. and then you might get a new congressperson, for example, or a new senator or a new assembly member at the next election because the map will be redrawn. Mm-hmm. But in terms of funding as well, right? It's important that we get that funding. It's important that we keep all congressional districts. I'm a Democrat, so I'm also president of the West County Democratic Club. So I'm going to ask people, right? It's better that we have Democrats than Republicans because we already know what the Republicans can do. They're not all very pro-environment, right? They're more into drilling. So
I want to be just sorry to interrupt, Cesar. I want to make sure that yes, you absolutely right that the Democratic Party been, I think, more environmental. Club is the nonpartisan, but you're right that unfortunately it trends that way. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Continue. So census is one, right? Super important, making sure that people go out there and get counted. It's super easy. If you haven't received your number, you can call. It takes about 15 minutes, either online or over the phone. They also need volunteers. So if you already got counted, you can volunteer to count people because they'll be making outward phone calls soon to make sure that people are getting counted. So census is one of them. The other one, helping with our environment, sitting as the West County Wastewater District Director, making sure that you don't flush non-flushable stuff down your toilet, right? It's only the 3 P's: pee, poop, and I forgot what the other one was.
Paper.
No paper.
No paper either? Oh.
No paper. So definitely no flushable wipes, mm-hmm. right? Even though they're called flushable wipes, they're not flushable. They will clog your toilets. So making sure that you don't flush anything down there that is not pee or poo, and don't dispose of your drugs down there. So if you have a bottle of Tylenol that is old, don't dispose it down the drain, because that then comes through the water system And our water, for example, our treated water goes over to East Bay Mud. East Bay Mud then cleans it a little bit more and then sends it back out either as purple water for irrigation, right? Chevron uses a lot of that recycled water, right? But we don't want to have these drugs on there because they're bad. Some of this water does have to go back out to the ocean if we have too much at times. So we don't want to put that out there. So if you need to dispose of any prescription drugs or anything, you can go over to Google it and figure out your local center that you can dispose of these drugs safely. So don't flush that down the drain or down the toilet. So that's sort of my thing. And vote coming November. Go out and vote. Vote for whoever, but just vote. Get counted.
Thank you, Cesar. You brought up a lot of very important. The drug water is a whole huge, conversation also about effect life and change of sex and fish and stuff. So it's a huge problem actually. So, and thank you so much. Yes. So vote, participate in census, and treat your toilet for only 3 P's, which we remember only 2, and we'll figure out the third.
I remember that.
Cesar, thank you so much. I really appreciate you're an amazing person and have an amazing life, and I looking forward to stay connected and having more conversations and hearing about your work. So sign Contra Costa Sierra Club group, please, and volunteer with Cesar. He is obviously amazing.
Yes. And by the way, the third P was paper, toilet paper, but only toilet paper.
See, I was right then. Right. That's what I said. Yes.
And you passed it. I failed.
Okay. That's totally fine. Right. But hey, we got it. That's what matters. Teamwork. Yay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Cesar. And we'll be in touch for sure.
Thanks for this. Have a great rest of the day. Stay safe, everybody. Wash your hands.
Yes. And mask properly.
Yes, that's the next conversation.